Welcome to the show, guys. We're continuing on with the Outlook Impact series for every team, breaking down every team, fantasy outlook, preview, everything you need to know from the guys that have the feet on the street. Today, we're joined by Jon Machota. Am I pronouncing that right, Jon?
Yeah, Machota, it's fine.
Machota.
Close enough.
How are things going? Are you out in Dallas right now? Where are you at?
Yeah, I live in Plano, which is about a 5-minute ride from their practice facility. I had been living in Dallas, and then they moved out here towards the end. Well, I was actually right before the start of the 2016 season, so I've been living out here since then, just because it's super close to. I mean, that's where they're at all the time. It's kind of funny that, if like I don't know, if you're not a huge football fan, I guess you'd think that like a team's home would be like their stadium, but it's like they're at that stadium like 10 times a year. They put their stuff in the locker right before the game, and then they get the stuff right after. Like never in those lockers, but they have these stadium tours, and people take all these pictures next to these lockers of all these players. Like those players are barely ever. They're always out here at the team facility in Frisco. So that's why I moved out here.
I'm so jealous because I'm actually in the Northeast. Like, think of Niagara Falls, Buffalo.
Yeah.
I'm there in the cold, and I'm looking to relocate. So I was deciding between Florida and Dallas, and Plano was the place I was deciding. I really liked Plano, and then I drove to Florida, and I saw like the Boca, Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, this is a lifestyle over here. So I decided we're gonna end up moving. I got the 2 young kids and the wife. We're gonna probably move down to the Florida area, but I'm not counting out that area. That's a beautiful area in Texas, Dallas area. I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I'm originally from right outside of Detroit. And so I've been down here since the end of 2010. I got down here in like October 2010. And, I thought like this time of year was really going to kill me just because it's like, like today it's like in the upper 90s. And it's like that for pretty much all of June, July, and August, even into some of September. But one thing that's nice is that the training camp's out in California. So it always kind of breaks that up, when you cover the team. So it hasn't been too bad. And then the trade-off is like, from where you're from, like we just don't get the snow down here, so I'll take that trade-off all day long compared to the snow that I was dealing with in Detroit,
Don't look back. And I just,
right.
my nose hairs freeze in the winter when I get from my house to the car. That you can't live there. It's just not livable. You're only
right.
in this Northeast for like 4 months out of the year. It's like really nice. But yeah, we have so much to discuss here, and it should be about half hour, 40 minutes. But what I really want to talk about here, obviously, is the fantasy outlook. There's some news today at the time of this recording where I just heard now that Pollard is going to get more volume. I want to talk about that. I won't dive in too much, but overall, I just want to get an idea of the volume share for fantasy outlook, any type of news. So we'll dive into. There's so much to cover, but who better to answer it than this stuff? So can you tell people a little bit about yourself and kind of your background, how you got into this, how much insights you have? I mean, if there's anyone that's going to know something, it's probably going to be you, right?
Well, yeah. So what happened is I was covering sports in Detroit. I went to Wayne State and got my bachelor's degree in journalism. And so while I was doing that, I was freelancing for a bunch of different papers, mostly doing high school football. But then I would freelance for the Detroit Free Press and do, some Tigers, Lions, things like that, help out wherever I could. And that went on for like 2 or 3 years. And I was just like, I wanted a full-time beat so bad. And one of the editors there, he went to ESPN, and then he went down to Dallas and got a job at the Dallas Morning News, and called me at the end of 2010 and was like, hey man, I know that they haven't hired you full time yet. If you're willing to continue to do freelance, I got plenty of stuff down here. And at that time I was like 28, and I was like, yeah, man, why not? If it doesn't work out, I'll move back to Michigan. Let's at least give this a try. And so I ended up freelancing down in Dallas for the Dallas Morning News and Fox Sports Southwest for about 2.5 years. And while I was doing high schools and I was doing Texas Rangers and Mavs and helping out with whatever, I would try and go out to the Cowboys practice facility, which at the time was a Valley Ranch in Irving, Texas. And so I was doing that like, 3 times a week and just making sure I could do my other work on top of that. Cause I just fell in love with it. I was like, this is what I want to do. I would love to get a chance to cover the Dallas Cowboys. There's just so much interest. I mean, the team's not even coming close to winning Super Bowls, and people are so obsessed with this team.
Right.
And I knew that from afar. I mean, I grew up watching, I was passionate about football at a young age. And man, those 90s Cowboys teams, even growing up in Detroit, all those games were on TV, like
Smith and the Troy Aikman. That was a time to be alive. I grew up watching the Bills. Boy, I love losing Super Bowls.
Well, I mean, hey, at least the Bills were getting to them. I mean, the Lions weren't even coming close to any of that. So I just remember the Cowboys always being on TV. Jerry Jones, like you said, Aikman, Emmett, Michael Irvin, all that stuff, even when they got Deion Sanders. And so when I get down there, I'm just kind of blown away by all of it. And before I moved down there, I would have taken a beat writing job covering any team, any sport. I just wanted to be a full-time beat writer. And then I got down there and I started, I mean, once I got to go around the Cowboys, I was like, this is what I want to do. And another thing that was big for me too, is that I was big into social media pretty early on, particularly with Twitter. And so I would, man, whenever like a locker room access was over or anytime, I was always tweeting up a storm because I was like, if I'm going to build my following, how am I going to do it better than this? And the other thing that helps with that with the Cowboys is that, you know, you grew up in Detroit or around Buffalo, like most of your news or most of the people that want to hear about the team are probably generally local. Whereas with the Cowboys, it's so crazy. Like how they're such an international product. I mean, just the stuff I found out over the last, 7-8 years of like season ticket holders that don't live anywhere close to here, that just fly in from other countries on Sundays because they're just obsessed with the Cowboys and they're just like this huge brand. And so basically got obsessed with it. And, I got offered a full-time job in 2014 to just cover Cowboys, and I've been doing it ever since. I ended up joining the Athletic, doing the same job in 2019, and so since 2014, I've been covering nothing but the Cowboys. And it's funny because, like I told you, at the time when I got into doing this, I was like, I'd be the beat writer for any team, and now there's not a team out there that I would rather cover. Now, let me be honest here, you got to factor in everything. Cost of living, weather, interest in the team. I challenge anybody to give me a better example to beat the Cowboys in that. I mean, and then the fourth one is, in a way, they're recession proof. Like I said, it's not like they're knocking on the. I missed. Have they knocked on the door to win a Super Bowl? They haven't been in the NFC Championship game since 1995. So, and they have as much interest as any team, probably the most of any team in the world. I mean, I'm sure you've seen those Forbes lists that come out all the time. Constantly the most valuable franchise in all of sports, and they haven't won anything in over 26 years. And so I guess the biggest thing I'm trying to get across is it's like, I'm constantly like, oh, wow, they're like this now. What if they did win like they did in the 90s? If I took a job somewhere else and they started winning like that again, I would be sick. I mean, just the interest they have already. If they were to win big, it would be off the charts.
There really is no bigger market team. Just looking at, there is nobody. I mean, you think the Patriots had a good market with Brady gone. I think they've kind of taken a bit of a dip. There really isn't a bigger market team than the Dallas Cowboys, whether you love them or you hate them. And you get a lot of haters, but you're obviously doing something right when you're the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, the Eagles, not even close, So in regards to that, and we're talking projections, how is the outlook? How do you think they finish this year? And again, guys, we're going to get into all the fantasy stuff. How do they finish this year? Especially let's start with their division, I guess. And is Dak the guy? I mean, he's had years to wow us. We're not really wowed. He hasn't taken them to the promised land. Do they have enough tools to finally do it this year?
I mean, I thought they had enough tools last year, to be honest with you. I just all the way throughout those playoffs. I mean, you look at the Rams and Bengals, like, yeah, looking back on it now, you're like, yeah, those are two outstanding teams. When we entered the playoffs, it's not like you have to go back 10 years. Go back to the start of the playoffs. And if I told you it had been Rams and Bengals, you'd have been like, there's no way. You're crazy. But that's just the way the NFL is. It's so wide open. The key thing with that Cowboys team last year was not only were they in the mix, but that was as healthy as any Cowboys team at that particular time, like entering that portion of the back end of the season into the playoffs. I mean, everything was there for them. And it's so funny because there's so many people now that, they're the only home team to lose a wild card game last year in the playoffs. So it's so easy for everyone now to be like, yeah, it's just a typical Cowboys, wherever. It's like, no, I've been covering this team religiously since 2014, and they've had some decent teams in there, 14, 16, both. They should have at least went to the NFC Championship game those years. But last year was the best that they were set up just because they were getting healthy at the right time. You get that home game against 49ers and lay an egg. And then so instead of building on that, you trade away Amari Cooper, you get rid of Lyle Collins, Cedric Wilson signs elsewhere. So, yeah, I think the defense can be better than it was last year because I do think they'll grow in year two with Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator and obviously Micah Parsons. I think it's only scratched the surface. But offensively, I just don't know how anybody can look at them and go, no, this team's going to be better than they were last year. Like, yeah, they add James Washington in free agency, 1-year deal out of, yeah, exactly, out of Pittsburgh. And then in the third round, they take Jalen Tolbert, who they easily could have taken Jalen Tolbert in the second round, and nobody would have been like, that's a bum pick. So that was my favorite pick out of their entire draft. I think he can contribute. But then the other part is like Michael Gallup is probably going to miss the first few games of the season. So you're going in and keep in mind, they open the season. You go Buccaneers and you got Bengals. Like they need to hit the ground running. They're probably not going to have Michael Gallup for either of those games. So it's hard for me to sit here and say that I think that they're going to be better just because I don't think that they're better on paper. If they're going to be better, it's probably because the defense just takes this another huge step. And that could happen, but they also led the league in takeaways last year. And just from a year-to-year thing, it's tough for teams that continue to get takeaways on that level. There is a little bit of a luck factor involved when you get that number of takeaways, particularly interceptions. So if the defense takes a huge step, sure. But the offense just, I mean, for it to even get back to what it was last year, I mean, you're talking Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, both have to be healthy all season. Dak Prescott has to be healthy all season. And those are three things that just didn't happen last year.
So let's get right into the fantasy of it. I'm really annoyed right now because I heard news today that Tony Pollard is going to get more volume. Now, I actually have a chart. I don't know how to describe this with my hands, but
Right.
like Elliott's attempts have gone. He was a 300 attempt guy. He's down here, and Pollard's have been kind of going up like this. If you look at it as a chart, I want to see Pollard go down and Zeke go back up. Like, I'm really annoyed. He's like what I call a fantasy football pest. He's taken away from what should be a workhorse running back and was for a long time. Is the end of Zeke here? Is Pollard actually, who broke this news? I don't even know, but Pollard is supposed to get more volume. Like, what's going on here? What Zeke? It's Zeke. It's the best running back in the game. Come on, man. What happened to you? You died. You're done.
Yeah, the big thing with Ezekiel Elliott is, like I always say, growing up in Detroit, you know, I'm a diehard Barry Sanders fan, and I feel like there's been games I've covered of the Cowboys where Ezekiel Elliott's taken more big hits and delivered more punishing hits than I saw Barry Sanders throughout his entire career. Whereas Barry, it was hard to get a good clean lick on him. Whereas Zeke looks for contact. Zeke takes on those big hits. So when you do that for 5-6 seasons in the NFL, on top of the fact that you were doing that for at least 2 solid seasons at Ohio State at a high level to win a national championship, there's a lot of wear and tear there. So I think it would be kind of naive in today's NFL to think that he can still be that workhorse back and keep them healthy when, let's be honest, Zeke does not care about winning another rushing title. Zeke wants to be as fresh as possible for the playoffs because that's what's missing for him. That's what's missing for Dak. That's what's missing for that whole crew. And so in terms of the Tony Pollard thing, the reason that story's coming out is because, we get to see some of OTAs these last 3 weeks. We get one practice each week and they're open to the media. And so Tony Pollard has been lining up a little bit more in the slot. So Zeke's still out there, but they're using Pollard a little bit more in the slot. The reason why I say pump the brakes and all that with the Pollard stuff is because I want to see it before I believe it. We've been told that in the past that was going to happen. Now, because you don't have Cedric Wilson, you don't have Amari Cooper, maybe it finally does open up more time for Tony Pollard to play some slot reps. Because, see, this is what happened is he did that at Memphis. And so when he was doing that at Memphis, he gets drafted, over 3 years ago. He's entering his 4th season now. There was talk his rookie year that it was going to be used that way. And we saw it sometimes, but we didn't see it throughout an entire season. They use it as more of a split back, kind of rotation thing. When Zeke needs a breather, Pollard will come in. So I don't necessarily think if Zeke's healthy, Zeke's getting all the touches that he can handle. But the issue was last year he wasn't healthy.
PCL, right? PCL, right?
Yeah, week 4. And there are games last year when he was healthy that he did look like the old Zeke, but it's like he was injured for the majority of the season. So you had to give more touches to Pollard. So I do think Pollard will get more touches in both the rushing and passing aspects. But if Zeke's healthy, they're not taking Ezekiel Elliott off the field because they're like, hey, we got to get Pollard some touches right now. They just won't do that. Zeke's touches will depend on Zeke. If he's healthy and he is running well, he will get the touches that will put him in the conversation to win a rushing title. If he's not, then you're going to see more Tony Pollard. But in Dallas, what everybody's been wanting to see for the last 3-4 years are more opportunities where both of those guys are on the field at the same time. And we just haven't seen that. So that's why people are starting to say, oh, well, now that there's some opening at wide receiver, maybe he'll get more wide receiver touches and we'll finally see it. That sounds great. That's amazing for OTAs. That's great storylines for minicamp. Let me see that in week 1. And then again, let me see that in week 10, 11, 12, 13, when it's nut cutting time and it matters. That's when I want to see that stuff. I don't care about it happening. Oh, if they did it 5 times this game. Yeah. No, let's actually see it. So, and that's on Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator. He's got to make sure that he finds a way to get them in there. But again, they obviously have to stay healthy so he can put them out there.
I believe like kind of what goes up must come down, what goes down must come up. Now I'm looking at the regression when we look at it from an attempt standpoint, because again, he's value this year. Zeke Elliott is coming off in the 3rd round. Everybody's sleeping on him, yet this guy is still going to finish top 10 amongst running backs. Now, 304 attempts in 2018, 301 in 2019, 244 in 2020, and then 237 last year. Understand he had that partially torn PCL and he was banged up. So you got to give him credit. So 237 attempts. I think he's hit the bottom. There's no way he's going to get that low. I think that comes up this year. I see him at 250 attempts. Could I be wrong that he's been down, and he comes a little back up? Do you kind of feel like he's going to swing back up a little bit?
Maybe a little bit, but there's a key person involved. There's two key people involved in this Ezekiel Elliott thing that I feel like people don't talk about enough, and that's Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy.
Right.
Mike McCarthy, if he was the head coach in 2016, not only are they not taking Zeke in the top 5, they're not even thinking of taking Zeke. That is a Jason Garrett. He was built around, this is how we won in the 90s. This is how they had success early on with Jason Garrett as head coach with DeMarco Murray. So this was going to be their new bell cow back. Mike McCarthy doesn't look at it the same way Jason Garrett does. And so Mike McCarthy is more about having everybody ready and healthy at the end of the season like they were last year. So Mike McCarthy is a big part of the reason that workload has decreased too, because like I said earlier, like, does it really matter if Zeke went for 250 in week 3? Yeah, that matters to his fantasy owners, but Mike McCarthy doesn't care about his fantasy owners. Mike McCarthy cares about Ezekiel Elliott being as healthy as possible in January so that he can lean on him when they have to go up to Green Bay and play a playoff game, or they have to go up to Philly, or they have to play some type of an outdoor cold weather game, and he can lean on him. He doesn't want him worn down at that point. So Mike McCarthy would love for it to be more of a split. And so you mentioned Zeke's stats going down, but it's the same thing with Tony Pollard the other direction. His carries and his touches in the passing game have gone up every single year he's been there. And I don't know that is necessarily the case if it's not for Mike McCarthy, because I know he wants them to both be as healthy as possible for January, which obviously does not help the fantasy owners. And hey, my brother had a fantasy team last year, and I was all about telling him, I was like, yeah, you should take Zeke. I think he's going to have a big year. And then I had him get Pollard later on as the handcuff. And it was exactly what you said earlier in the show. It's like, you don't know who to play week to week. They're taking points away from each other. It is. Yeah, I get it from the fantasy standpoint, but Mike McCarthy just doesn't care about the fantasy side of it.
Well, that's one thing I don't get about reality football. Okay. Like, if I'm a coach, I want to, and I know you're working a guy, you want to preserve him, and I get it. But if I'm a coach, I want the best guy out there. I want to optimize every down, every play. I'm not fucking around with like, I got to get this, this backup. Zeke is the better running back. I run him to the ground. If he gets hurt, so be it, but I'm running him. Derrick Henry did that. Jonathan Taylor. And again, a perfect example, Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor, for example. Marlon Mack sucks. Years to wow us, we're not wowed, right? That's the saying that I use. Welcome to the counselor club here. Years, and then finally, I'm like, just let Taylor run free. And then they finally let him run free. And look what he did. He ran over the entire league. Same thing with Montgomery, right? Nagy was there hindering Montgomery. He put it was like what, 3rd and goal, or and he's letting Tariq Cohen run the goal line, like he smashed, like, and they're getting stuffed. I'm like, why are you letting Tariq Cohen smash the ball when you've got David fucking Montgomery here? And that's what frustrates me. I'm a coach. I'm playing my best player. Screw the preservation, because I need to save him for playoffs, but I need to get to the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at it. But I'm a fantasy guy.
Right. And but I'm telling you, I think if you were a head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, though, and they'll never say this publicly, but you look at that dumpster fire division they're in, you feel pretty confident you're going to make all you have to do is win the NFC East to be in the playoffs. That's like 9 wins. So, I completely get what you're saying. And I do think it would be different if you just move the Cowboys to the NFC West, where it's like every week, man, good luck. Whereas when they're in the NFC East, these last 5-6 years, it's kind of like, no, we can probably get it done here and be able to preserve these guys, because we're going to win the division. So we're hosting our first playoff game on top of it. So I think some of that's factored in. Again, they won't say that publicly. The other thing is I don't think that they feel as confident about Tony Pollard being the number 1 guy as they do Zeke. And again, when I say that, I mean in January, in playoff games, they want Zeke to be the guy that can take instead of him getting 25 carries in week 4 against Carolina, they want those 25 carries to 30 carries against San Francisco in your wild card game at home, which you were hoping that was going to happen, and it didn't. But I think that Mike McCarthy would have given him more carries if it wasn't for that PCL injury in week 4 that he played through the rest of the season.
So are you super confident with their division that they're going to finish on top? The Eagles, they brought A.J. Brown, who's pretty good. Hurts could take a step up this year. And then you've got the Giants improving their O-line. Saquon could run wild this year. Daniel Jones, obviously a make or break year for him. Carson Wentz and the Commanders, or whatever their name is now, they change it every week. I don't even care about that team. But I mean, the Eagles could actually be a boomer bust type of team this year. They've got some weapons now. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. They've definitely closed the gap. That's what a lot of talk down here is about, that have the Eagles close the gap on the Cowboys over the last couple of years. And I think they have, but there's just one thing that's probably keep me from saying that they've passed the Cowboys, and that's just Jalen Hurts. I need to know what Jalen Hurts is going to do. If you tell me Jalen Hurts takes another step, then yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles win. I mean, that would be my pick. If you said, like, let's say I was reading a bunch of stuff in training camp or something like that, they're like, man, this looks like a different Jalen, not even a different, but just a little bit better passing Jalen Hurts, because he certainly can run the football with the best. But if it looks like the passing game, him and AJ Brown are clicking, things like that, him and Devontae Smith take another step, I could see the Eagles doing it. But if not, I see a very, like, and again, it's just OTAs and that, but I see a very motivated Dak Prescott. I think he's going to have a huge year. I think he feels like, those injuries last year held him back, because those first 6 weeks before he had the calf strain against New England, I mean, he was playing at an MVP type level, and then he had the calf strain and everything just fell apart. And not only his fault too, the offensive line fell apart last year too. So I think when it comes down to, I think Dak's the difference between those two teams, because I do think it's a 2-team race. But again, this is a division that hasn't had a back-to-back winner since 2004, 2005 with the Eagles. So, I mean, it's a long time, and the Cowboys won it last year. So, I mean, if I'm in Vegas right now, yeah, I probably would say that the Eagles are the pick right now. I need to see a little bit more out of Jalen Hurts.
Okay, so let's just wrap up here on the running backs committee-wise percentage. Do you think it's going to be, I mean, I don't want to hold you to this, but
yeah,
if you were to guess, what's the split share? 60-40 Zeke this year, or 70-30 Zeke? How does it play out?
Yeah, in terms of carries, I think 60-40, 65-35 for Zeke. Okay. But I just think that when you hear people say increase in Tony Pollard's touches, just think of it as more of a slot receiver, more of not as much taking away. Because here's the thing, like Zeke, there's so many goal line carries, so many short yardage situations that they're not going to be giving the ball to Tony Pollard. They're going to be given. There's just so many that are automatically situations that Zeke's getting the ball, especially in big games late. He just has the trust, of the team. He's just one of the faces of that team, not only on TV, but in that locker room. So as long as he's healthy, yeah, I'd say 65-35. But I think that Tony Pollard, where he makes that jump, is in the targets in the passing game.
Okay. Dak Prescott, should we have any concerns health-wise? He should be good to go. I mean, ever since you saw that picture of his leg flopping around there a couple years ago, I'm not laughing because I don't laugh at injuries, but it was just a horrible scene to see. Yeah. I mean, ever since then, I've kind of in the back of my mind, I think a lot of people had that vision, like, is he healthy? Like, what's going on, man? Because that was a brutal picture.
Yeah, no. And there's one of the big things that happened then too, is it marked the end of him as a runner. Now, was he Jalen Hurts runner? No. Was he
Lamar Jackson? No.
Right. No. So, but he was a guy that wouldn't hesitate to get out of the pocket, and he would fight for extra yards when guys were trying to tackle him. And that's exactly what happened on that possession when he got that injury. Instead of just going down, he's fighting for an extra 2-3 yards. And that was a mistake, because before that injury, I mean, Dak's built like a linebacker. I mean, there was he's every game, 16 starts. Like, you never even thought of him coming out of a game. But then obviously when your ankle is pointing in the wrong direction, well, we knew that his season was done. But it's, in terms of him being a runner in that part of his game, you knew that was going to be scaled back. So I don't see any, what we've seen in OTAs, he looks as good as ever in terms of his movement and things like that. The one thing, though, is, you don't have Cedric Wilson, a guy that he was used to playing around. You don't have Amari Cooper. So he's got to build up a rapport with James Washington and Michael Gallup. James Washington and Jalen Tolbert really quick. And then you have to work back in Michael Gallup coming back from the knee injury. That's 3 key pieces there that, he has Dalton Schultz he can throw to, and he has obviously CeeDee Lamb and that, but there's 3 other key pieces that offensive passing game that and we're not going to know where that's at until training camp in the preseason. So they need to bridge that gap for him to be able to get back to the guy he was before that injury.
Okay, so how excited should we be about CeeDee Lamb in regards to a volume perspective and talent? Now there's a big void there, 120, 30, 40 targets freed up with Cooper gone. Should we be excited about CeeDee Lamb absolutely exploding this season? And how good is Jalen Tolbert as a rookie? Could he be a massive breakout? How good is Jalen Tolbert, and how excited are we about CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah, it's tough to know a ton about Tolbert just because the first 2 OTA practices he was out, he had a hamstring strain, so we didn't see a ton of him. He did do a little bit this past week. So this mini camp will be interesting. This will be, they have 3 days of mini camp this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and those are all open to media. So that we'll get a lot better taste of what Jalen Tolbert is there. In terms of the CeeDee Lamb thing, though, I think CD continues to get better, and I think he has the ability to put up a monster year, but I'm cautious in believing that he will. And the only reason I say that is because if you're an opposing defense right now and you're trying to take away something, you're an idiot if number one on your list isn't CeeDee Lamb. I mean, with Amari Cooper being gone, all your coverage, Dalton Schultz, great tight end, or really good, solid tight end, great guy, great safety blanket for Dak and things like that. If you're an opposing team, you're just fine. If Dak's like, oh, you're going to take away CD, I'll throw it to Dalton Schultz 15 times. Those teams are going to go, yeah, cool, do that. Go right ahead. We'll give you those 15 touches. They're going to take CD Lamb away with all kinds of different coverages. So that's the one part where it's like CD Lamb's success depends so much on Gallup and Tolbert and James Washington. They have to be good enough to where they will punish you if you do too much double teaming on CD Lamb, because with Amari gone, Cedric Wilson gone, there's just so much attention that's going to come on to CeeDee Lamb right now that, especially early in the season, I mean, they're going to move him around. I mean, they're going to use CeeDee Lamb in a variety of ways. And I would almost compare it to from what we've seen so far, almost like a Debo light type thing, where he's not as big as Debo Samuel. He did put on some weight, which is obviously because they want him to get a little bit bigger in that, but he is going to take some handoffs. He's going to be used a ton more in the slot than he has been. They'll still use him outside. And I mean, he's going to be all over the place, but I just look at every single week, every team going in and going, okay, what are we taking away? And almost all of them are going to say, we're going to try and limit the run and take away 88. And so because of that, I think CeeDee Lamb's numbers will just be a little bit better than they were last year.
It's such a weird year. I'm looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've got a 1B as their wide receiver one in Kirk. Michael Pittman with the Colts, I think he's a 1B. You look at Brandon Cooks with Houston, 1B. Alan Lazard is like a 2. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cortland Sutton, which we're not sure. Like all of these guys, there isn't a lot of true wide receiver ones. Like Darnell Mooney is really good. He could take a step up this year, but he's not like a Jamar Chase. He's not like a Cooper Kupp. So again, I think you're having the same situation. So my question is, I look at CeeDee Lamb as one of those guys. He could be a Jamar Chase. I don't know. I don't think he's that good, obviously, but he's got that potential, but I don't think he's going to get there. How do you view him as a solid clear-cut one? Because I don't view him as a solid clear-cut one. I think he's a 1B or maybe even a 2A. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I do think that this year, I think he's elevated himself from year to year. I think he is a clear 1. To me, I think he'll be a top 10, top 12 wide receiver. I'm not, I don't see him getting the type of production as a Jamar Chase, like you said. And even like, when I think of a real true, if we're really one, like I think of like, Calvin Johnson, Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers, things like that. Like, I don't think CD's on that level, but I do think of him as being as much of a 1 as we've seen here probably since Dez Bryant. So yeah, no, I would put him on that same level. Dak's going to be looking for him like crazy. I thought it was kind of interesting that, because of COVID, we hadn't been able to go in the locker room like the last 2 years. So we get to go in the locker room this year, and CD's locker is right next to Dak. And I asked him, I was like, what came about this? And he was like, Dak's the one that, asked them to move my locker right next to his, so that we're always constantly, because they know that their success depends so much on each other, vice versa. So I do think that they're going to have a type of rapport where he's going to go at him even when there is some double coverage, but obviously some bad things can happen when you do that. But no, I do think CeeDee Lamb is a legit number 1.
Yeah. So, and then Michael Gallup, when he gets back, he looks really good. I like his yards after catch. He fights. And again, I've observed him. He fights really hard after the catch. Yeah. He could be a 1. Doesn't Gallup have that kind of 1 touch to him, feel to him, or not really?
Well, I'll say this. I do think he has all the tools to be a number 1. We just haven't seen him put it all together. We've seen flashes throughout, obviously staying healthy is a key part of it too, but you see flashes of him going downfield. You see flashes of him using the big body type catches in the red zone and different things like that. And hey, maybe it's because he has been playing with CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, where it's like, well, we don't really get your chance to shine. So maybe that is this year. So believe me, there'd be a lot more talk about that if he ended last season healthy and he was going into this season fully healthy. And it was like, hey, you and CD are going to be the guys. But because we're not seeing him out there, and because the Cowboys have already said he might miss the first few games of the season, there's just a lot of projecting there. So it's like, okay, so you're not in for the first 2 or 3 games. So then it's going to take a couple games to catch up. So are you looking at him being the Michael Gallup you thought by week 6, 7? He's coming off the knee injury. Is he not going to be fully all the way back this year? There's just a lot of questions that we're not going to have the answers to until you might be a month into the season.
All right. So who are you drafting from the wide? Do you play fantasy? I don't think I asked you that yet.
Last year I helped my brother with his team, and that was the first time in probably 6 or 7 years. So I haven't stayed super up on it, but if you throw some names at me, I'll probably have an opinion about it.
Yeah, you know what we'll do? I'm interviewing all the beat writers. Believe it or not, I had a lackluster team before you. We just did the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay, yeah.
That's one extreme to the other. So I got to get all you guys together. We should do a fantasy league.
Yeah.
All the beat writers have 2 leagues going. That would be interesting.
There you go.
So okay. So would you draft Jalen Tolbert as a sleeper? And what kind of stat line do you see on a high end? If Jalen Tolbert goes off, I mean, a lot of things would have to happen. You have to have a major injury to Gallup or something for him to get that volume, right? What type of stat line do you project for Tolbert if he went off?
That's a good question. I would say, I'm trying to look at what Gallup had his rookie year, because I think it'll be better than Gallup's rookie year. So Let's see. Michael Gallup had 507 and 2. Well, damn, I can't believe he only had 2. Yeah, well, I guess Amari was there. So I'd say 600-700 yards, maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns. I for his numbers to be higher than that, something would have to happen, I feel like, to somebody else, because Dak is going to throw to CeeDee Lamb. He's going to throw to Dalton Schultz, and when Gallup comes back, he's going to throw to Gallup because he just has this rapport with those guys, and even James Washington is a veteran guy that has a lot more experience in the league, and I get it. Some receivers are like Jamar Chase and hit the ground running, but still, I mean, wide receiver isn't the. And then again, he's coming from South Alabama, like the level of competition and things like that. I think for him to have big games are going to be in those games where the defense is trying to take all these other guys away and he just has the most favorable matchup. And so, yeah, that can happen several weeks, but not enough to where I think he's going to get like 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns or anything like that. So I'd say 400 or 500 yards, maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns.
I remember James Washington bitching and complaining in Pittsburgh. He didn't get the ball enough. Is he going to be a little bit whining in there? Is he going to give me the ball? Give me the ball. And you might get that. And would the coaches accommodate James Washington, I should say, if he does start whining and saying he wants the ball? I moved here because I want the ball. Give it to me. Do you think that's going to happen? Is he going to demand the ball?
He might, but I don't think it would really matter that much, because at least when he was in Pittsburgh, it's like you got him under a rookie 4-year deal. He signed a very minimal 1-year deal. If you're going to be ruffling feathers, well, have fun. Then you're going back out of free agency next year, and you have really not a lot to show for it. I mean, he needs to do everything in his power to buy in and just have a good year because of just the contract that he signed. Okay. But yeah, I just found it interesting that he was even available, because I hadn't followed Pittsburgh super close the last couple of years, but their sample size, I don't think there's a better team in the NFL over the last 10, 15 years at drafting wide receivers, and maybe even longer at wide receivers, just what they've been able to find in the later rounds. I mean, you can go all the way back to Hines Ward, but even, guys more recently and things like that, they usually they draft very well at wide receiver. So for the James Washington thing not to work out, maybe think, all right, well, when he wasn't getting the ball, maybe it was a issue with Ben Roethlisberger thing. And obviously if you have an issue there, Big Ben's not going anywhere. As long as he's healthy and go out there, he's your quarterback. So maybe that had something to do with it. I'm not sure. But again, when we went out to OTAs 2 weeks ago, he had a walking boot on. So I was like, oh, well, he's not going to be doing anything right now. And so we probably aren't going to see much out of him until training camp. So I'm interested to see how he works in, because, I mean, he was a high draft pick at one point. So, and I know the Cowboys were super interested in him when he was coming out in that draft. I think it was might have been the Michael Gallup draft. So they were looking for wide receivers. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what he can do, because like I said, I have a ton of respect for what Pittsburgh's been able to draft at wide receiver, and he clearly didn't work out there.
Years to wow me, I'm not wowed. He didn't look sensational. I was following that team a lot. So yeah, I'm not wearing the Steelers hat I was for the other show, but yeah, I follow them a lot. They're very fantasy relevant. So it's something I really, really watch. And then just Dalton Schultz here real quickly. He had pretty good numbers last year. Again, first of all, did he fix a contract? I know he was holding out or something. Is he going to get what he deserves? And from a stat line, is he going to step up? I think he had 104 targets, something last year, and 8 touchdowns. Is that going to go up this year? Are we expecting big things for fantasy and reality from Schultz?
I don't think they're going to go up. I think they'll be pretty similar. And production wise, I mean, he's right there, top 5 or 6 tight ends in terms of his last year, his targets, his receptions, his receiving touchdowns and all that. So I think the numbers will stay pretty similar. Like, he's not a super dynamic tight end, like with the big, like, everybody will point to like the new age, like Kyle Pitts and stuff like he's not doing that kind of stuff, and that's why he was a 4th round pick. And to be honest with you, it took him a couple of years to get to where he is now, but Dak loves him. They're super close on the same page. And so he will be like kind of to Dak a little bit like what Witten was to Romo, where it's like, there's going to be situations where he's going to keep going to him, like, multiple times on a possession just because he feels confident with him. So his numbers, I think, will be pretty comparable to where they were last year. In terms of the contract, he wants, a long-term deal, which I totally understand. I don't get the sense that the Cowboys are going to give it to him. I expect him to play this year under the franchise tag, which will pay him about $11 million guaranteed. And then that puts him in a position to hit free agency and possibly cash in, whether it's with the Cowboys or with another team, if he is able to put up another year that's pretty similar. But yeah, he's not the, like Darren Waller or guys like that, but he's just really, really solid. And like I said, Dak knows where he's going to be. Good, solid red zone guy to move the sticks on 3rd down, things like that. And so if he was had that little bit more dynamic down the seam type stuff, they probably would get a contract done. But I think they want to see him kind of do it for another year. And I think he will do it for another year.
Okay, well, you've answered a lot of fantasy questions. Last thing, real quick, I ask everybody this: is there anything inside information-wise that we need to know that that we don't know, that maybe it's not on the mainstream news? Like, and again, I use this as an example. Does Dak high five, CD Lamb and says, "You're the best," before every game? Is there any type of little tidbits or any golden nuggets or any type of fantasy relevant information that you might know that we don't know that you could share with us?
Yeah, I don't know about in terms of fantasy relevance, but when you mentioned Dak, one of the first things I thought of was how, he's got this perception on the outside of just like, oh, Dak's such a good guy and he's the best, and he's involved in all these charities and whatever. And I find a lot of times in sports that with a lot of people that are like that, like behind the scenes, they might not be that way. That is absolutely what you see with Dak Prescott is what you get, and he is absolutely that guy behind the scenes. That's why he was able to basically get to a spot where it was like in his rookie year, he took the job from Tony Romo because he just wins over the locker room. Dak literally has everything that you want. Like, he is that guy 24/7. It just, he has to win those big games later in the year. And he just hasn't, that's what, that's not just Dak Prescott. That's every quarterback that's, in that top 10, top 15 in the NFL. I'm trying to think of something fantasy wise that would be,
any type of rapport building that we're not seeing.
Yeah. What's funny about it, the Cowboys, it is so rare that there's anything that happens with the Cowboys, it gets put out there. Like, there's not very much like keeping stuff, in-house in terms of like the way personnel is being used and things like that. That's why, like you mentioned, that Tony Pollard story gets so much weight. And there's really, I'm being honest with you, there's not that much there. Like, what's being reported right now literally does not matter for week 1. That's fun OTA mini camp. I'm sure you've seen these stories of all these guys. We make jokes about it. Best shape of my life, best whatever. Like, that's great storyline for this time of the year. But like, when the season actually starts, that's why, like, I kind of pump the brakes on the whole, like, oh, this is going to be the year that Tony Pollard is used in the slot time. Like, I think he'll be used more, but I don't think it's going to be at a level where you're just like, whoa, where did this come from? Like, for example, if they thought they were about to use him like that and it was going to be something crazy, why wouldn't they work out a long-term deal with him so that he wouldn't? You're going to give that guy all those touches, both in the passing game and in the running game. And then you're going to allow him to go to free agency next year, because this is the final year of his rookie deal. If you felt like he was going to be used like that, you'd be trying to get him signed right now to something, at least for the next 2-3 years. And I don't get any sense that that's about to happen. So while it makes for a great storyline right now, I don't know if I necessarily see that. I think a lot of the stuff that you guys see right now, fantasy owners right now, in terms of like the Dalton Schultz, Ezekiel Elliott, CD Lamb, Dak Prescott, those are the guys, those are going to be the same guys this year. There's not going to be a real diamond in the rough guy that comes out of nowhere and just all of a sudden you're like, where was this guy, back in June?
Well, that's what I feel. The only thing guy I could see doing that is Tolbert. Can he? That's what I'm saying. Could he be that diamond? Like, oh my God, I'm glad I got this guy. He turned out to be the next Justin Jefferson. Doesn't? Yeah, probably not. Right?
It's such a tough thing because of the fact of the South Alabama thing for me. Like, he did play well against better competition, but to make that jump to the NFL, and what we're talking about is have immediate success, I don't know that I'm betting on that right away. If you tell me he's like Michael Gallup, where it's like he has a solid rookie year and then he gets to a level where you're like, damn, this is a solid like number 2 receiver or something, I could certainly see that happen. just in my, few times talking to him, I mean, he certainly is wired the right way. He's got all the things that you want in terms of the work ethic and the things he looks for, film study and all that. So, I mean, with Jalen Tolbert, one of the things that factored in them drafting him is that the Cowboys gave Dak Prescott a handful of names. Like, they were like, hey, we're going to be taking a wide receiver in like the second or third round. Call some of these guys, get a feel for them, what you think. And Jalen Tolbert told us that Dak's the only quarterback in the NFL that called him. So he was kind of surprised by, he's like, I didn't know that in the draft process, quarterbacks would call. So that factored in. So there's stuff about him that Dak liked, and that Dak was like, hey, if you can get this guy, that'd be great. But sitting there and having that and then actually seeing that on the field, I think you're going to have to see some stuff in training camp. You're going to have to see some stuff. They have open practices this year against the Chargers and up in Denver against the Broncos. That stuff will go farther than just anything we're seeing right now. But certainly, yeah, if you told me Jalen Tolbert elevates to the number 2 wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys, it wouldn't shock me. I just think it's going to take him some time.
That's really, really good insight. I really appreciate having you on it, and stuff like this that for me, when I do podcasts, that's what I do for a living. I've been doing this since 2016. I love podcasting. This gets me, especially in the off season, it gets me to tie me over till the season because I'm getting that itch. I want football in my life right now. I'm watching the NBA playoffs. I watch some UFC over. Do you watch any UFC at all or no?
I do a little bit, but I would be, I guess, what people would categorize as more of the New York Yankees type of UFC fan. And when I say that, it's I'm not going to miss a Conor McGregor fight. I'm not going to, like, yeah. Like the big stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not a diehard, but when there are the main event, big time fights, yeah, I will definitely go out of my way to watch those.
Because it got me thinking when you're talking about Zeke Elliott getting old, he's what, like 26 now or something like that. He's young, right?
I mean, yeah, he's young by like my standards of life being 40, but in the NFL standards, I feel like you can even add a year or two on just because, I mean, Derrick Henry is the only one that's gotten the touches that Zeke has since 2016. I mean, and even Zeke's got more than him. So there just isn't many, there aren't many backs getting used by him. Yeah, he'll be 27 next month, but I feel like he has the wear and tear from how he's been utilized as like a 30-year-old running back, so I still think Zeke's got another solid 2-3 years ahead of him that he can contribute. I just don't know if we're going to see the 2016 or 2017 Zeke again, where he's like lowering his helmet into Cam Chancellor, trying to set the tone on things like that. It's about kind of surviving and advancing at this point.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to use that comparison because we just had a Glover Teixeira fight. He's 42 and had the fight of his life. I mean, this guy's 42 fighting on a peak level. He's fighting a 29-year-old guy.
Yeah.
29-year-old one, Yuri, his name is. What a great fight. One of the best UFC fights this past weekend. And the point I'm trying to make is that, yeah, for like a running back, 26, you look at a Zeke worn down all these years, but then you have a guy who's been fighting since 2002. This guy's 42, fighting at a peak level. So it's just crazy how beat down running backs get so early and their careers done, like Le'Veon Bell done, like so many guys that still relatively young done, or now some of them are moving on to do boxing careers. So it's like,
hold on. When you talk about that fighter being 44, when's the last time or 42? When's the last fight he had before that one?
He's a champion. He's the light heavyweight 205 champion. His name is Glover Teixeira. He just lost his belt to a 29-year-old, and he was champion. He was the champion.
But how often do you think, or how often is he fighting? Like once, however, how many?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Probably 2 times a year. These big.
Okay, so the reason I'm bringing that up is because this is something that it's talked about a little bit down here, a lot between us beat writers, and I'm sure fans do too. But one of the big things is, so Zeke has that PCL injury, and the Cowboys were already in position to, like, you knew they were making the playoffs, but they wanted to, keep playing their starters. They didn't want to kind of back in, and I'm going to tell you this right now, if they would have sat Zeke the last 2 weeks of the season and had him as healthy as possible that he could be for that 49ers game, I wouldn't be surprised if they beat the 49ers, because when Zeke has had the time off and he's come back, whether it's a bye week, whether he took a game off or something like that, that next game, you usually see a vintage Zeke. It's the 17 weeks where he doesn't want to miss a game because, like I said, he is one of the faces of this franchise. He is a leader in that locker room. He doesn't want to sit there and tell the guys like, hey, I can't play in this one. I'm resting my PCL. And so there's that dynamic of where you're the highest paid running back, you're the face of this team, your running style is very physical, so you're not trying to run around guys and run out of bounds. So it's like this double-edged sword where it's like, they really should rest him a week or two, and then they go in the playoffs and have him as healthy as possible, but they didn't do that. Now they rest him for like a week or rest him, but if I thought that they should have tried to max him out and be like, hey, let's shut him down for like the last 3 or 4 weeks. We're going to make the playoffs. Let's just do that. And let's see what we can get once we're there. But that never happened. And so you see a Zeke that is banged up.
Right. Well, no, that's exciting. A lot of insight here, Jon. They can follow you on Twitter, right? Jon Machota.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. This was a great talk. Lots of insight. We'll have to get you on maybe during the season. My prime time is August. Maybe get an update from you. I mean, if there's any guy I want to bring back, I may not bring back no offense, but I may not bring back the Jacksonville guy. I don't think, maybe people might be interested in the Cowboys. Who knows?
Yeah.
But credit to the Jacksonville guy. I mean, still some good players there and some potential upside on that team. You never know. But we'll have to get you back on in August and talk some Cowboys because, again, so many people want to hear about the Cowboys. Like you said, the biggest market, America's team, right? So we got to keep in touch so you keep tapped in with the fantasy community for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great time to be for you and for me to be doing stuff like this, because I feel like it's become, the window gets smaller. I feel like almost every year in the NFL where there's really not a lot going on. And this is one of those windows right now, basically between now and then when training camp starts for like the end of July, where there really isn't much going on in the NFL. And then once you get to that training camp in July, it's like the cycle starts back over. That's why this is the time of year where I try to use my PTO, because it's like, I know I'm not going to be able to use it from July all the way through January. And it really, honestly, it's beyond that, because now with the draft, the combine, all that stuff, like it's really doesn't even stop at the end of January. It's like you go Super Bowl and then boom in the draft, and then you're right back into rookie minicamp. So this is like the only time when there isn't a ton going on in the NFL, which is great for our business.
Calm versus the storm, right?
Right.
I don't even have time to breathe because I put out content all season. But when it hits like, mid-July to like first week of September, it's huge because everyone's doing their drafts. It gets out of control. Like I have like 10,000 plus DMs. Who do I start? Who do I do?
Oh, yeah.
I create a 16-round draft solution. It tells you all the optimal players to draft. Go buy my course because, again, I can't physically be there to help everybody. So I created a video trading that gives you guys the opportunity to get all my players, and that's like having me at the draft with you. So I created a solution, but still, man, it gets crazy, which is good. We're in demand, which is fun.
Right. Absolutely. No, this is a great business. I don't feel like I've worked a real day of actual work in the last 10 years of my life. So I love it.
It's grateful. Sometimes I kind of take it for granted. It doesn't really hit me that I'm actually doing what I love. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Same here.
So, all right, Jon, I appreciate you. We'll get you on, guys. Thanks, guys. Make sure you guys subscribe, follow Jon, and there's your Cowboys inside information. We're out. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Jon.
No problem. Thank you.